Hey guys, I told you I'd be back today. I did my yoga and I even did some walking in place while I was listening to a video. So I got over 4,000 steps today. Woot, woot, woot. I got my water so I don't choke like I was doing before. And we're going to read the part 3 of the book is The Quest of the Grail. So this is... Wait a minute. I lost my place. Look at that. The end of the round table. It's not the Grail. We did the Grail already. Okay, so chapter 16. Let's see. Oh, 16 is long. So is 17. Okay. I will try to get through 3 chapters. Maybe 4. Well, okay, we'll see. I'll do as much as I can in a half an hour. How's that sound? This is Sir Lancelot and the Lily Maid of Astolat. The Round Table was scattered on the quest of the Holy Grail. A few knights had returned, but the court was empty and spiritless. It was hot summer weather, and King Arthur decided to hold a tournament to keep up their spirits and their practice in arms. Let me sit back. Let me take a sip of my fun purple tea. Sometimes Lancelot did not fight in these jousts because he always won. That discouraged the young and gave rise to tricks and foul play by the wicked. On this occasion, he thought he would fight in disguise on one of the visiting teams. It was always possible to join a team on the day of the joust, and a knight could keep his helmet on and not show his face. If he had a good horse and armor and knew the rules of chivalry, he was welcome. The tournament was to be in Winchester. The court was in London, so all rode down through the leafy lanes and green fields of Surrey and Hampshire. On the way they lodged at Astolat. Behind them, in new armor, visor down, rode Sir Lancelot, his shield with the famous gold leopards on blue background hidden under a covering. Astolat was full and busy with the arrival of the court. It had a castle in which lived an old-fashioned family who did not mix much with the great world. The lady of the castle was dead, and old Sir Bernard had brought up his 2 sons and 1 daughter in a quiet and simple way. The sons, Torre and Lavaine, were new knights, and the daughter Elaine was her father's darling, young, beautiful, and good, and dearly loved by all people, who called her the Lily Maid of Astolat. The old quiet castle did not attract people of the court, but Lancelot rode there and was given a warm welcome, though no one knew him. When they had all made friends, Lancelot explained that he wanted to joust unrecognized, which was quite unusual, and asked if he might borrow a plain shield, leaving his there to pick up back on his way. Sir Bernard said that his eldest son, Sir Torre, had been hurt in his first joust and could not go to the tournament, and that the visitor could have his shield. He asked him to take with him Lavaine, his younger son, whose first joust it would be. The men stood talking, and Elaine listened silently, too shy at first to look much at the stranger or to speak, but gradually she began to look up on him, and saw the tall, strong figure and the dark hair and the sun-tanned face, the deep eyes that looked on all men with love. Elaine lifted up her eyes and loved him deeply, a love that was her doom, because Lancelot's true love, his one and only love, was always the queen. The evening passed, and Sir Lancelot told tales of the king's wars. Early the next morning, he and Lavaine got ready to go. Elaine came to them and asked very shyly if Sir Lancelot would wear her favor at the tournament. That's a token of affection or remembrance. Whoop. Where am I? I lost my place. Oh, here we go. He answered that he had never done that in his life, not saying that the reason that he was the true knight only of the queen. Elaine replied that it would make it all the more a complete disguise for him, and moved by this idea, Sir Lancelot accepted. He tied the favor, a red sleeve sewn with pearls, onto his helmet. There's Elaine asking Lancelot if he would wear her favor. Sir Lavaine brought him his brother's shield, and Lancelot asked Elaine to keep his shield for him until he came again. Then the knights rode away, followed by their squires. On the way to Camelot, Sir Lancelot told Lavaine who he was. The young man gave his promise to keep the secret. Meanwhile, Elaine at home had taken the stranger's shield up to her room and had started to make a cover for it by copying the design of the gold leopards onto blue embroidery. When the tournament day arrived, Sir Lancelot and Sir Lavaine rode out to Winchester quietly, and came by a lane to a little leafy wood where the teams opposing the king were camped. Sir Lancelot was wearing the red sleeve on his helmet. They waited in hiding while the teams lined up, the trumpets blew, and the opening charges were made. Against King Arthur were the lords of North Wales and of Northumberland, and many others. Sir Lancelot's expert eye followed every move. Lavaine, his lance ready, waited quivering for the word of command. One knight after another on each side charged, and the battle began to take shape. King Arthur's side pressed the others hard. "See that group of good knights," said Sir Lancelot through his visor. "They hold together like boars chased by hounds. Now with your help we shall make those knights who are chasing those fellows on our side go back as far as they are now coming forward." He fixed his eye on the nerve center of the fighting and charged right in. His first impact sent flying 5 knights: Sir Kay, Sir Brandiles, Sir Sagramore, Sir Dodinus, and Sir Griflet. Young Lavaine sent down 2 good knights, Sir Lucan and Sir Bivadere. Lancelot did not pause. That was part of the secret of his superiority in fighting. He gave no time to recover or think. Before half the side knew that he had joined in, he had unhorsed 7 more, and Lavaine another. But in the next charge Sir Lancelot's horse was hurled to the ground, and Sir Bors' spear pierced Sir Lancelot's side and broke off. When Lavaine saw the horse fall, he wheeled to the King of the Scots, who happened to be unguarded, and knocked him off his horse. He grabbed the bridle and forced his way right in and held everybody off while Sir Lancelot got onto the horse. Then began a fight that no one will ever forget. Sir Lancelot thought that he would die from his wound, and he was determined to die well. Nobody could match him. He struck down Sir Bors, Sir Ector, Sir Lionel, and 3 more. The first 3 got on horseback again and charged him. He sent them flying again and performed the final act of victory on each by taking off their helmets and proving that if he wished he would cut off their heads. A knight so defeated was out of the battle. 40 knights did these 2 champions strike down, Sir Lancelot 30 and Sir Lavaine 10. The match was won, and the king and the Round Table had lost. The heralds announced that the prize was awarded to the knight wearing the red sleeve, but the knight was nowhere to be found. At the trumpet's sound he had turned and ridden fast into the leafy wood, followed by Sir Lavaine, feeling his wound worsen as the heart of the battle died away. An old friend of his, once a knight and now a hermit and doctor, lived in the wood, and Sir Lancelot rode there fast. He was almost unconscious when they arrived. The hermit recognized him at once, and he carried him in with Sir Lavaine and began the fight to save his life. Meanwhile, King Arthur ordered a search to be made for the victor knight. Sir Gawain organized a hunt around Winchester, but without success. So the prize was not awarded, and the court returned to London. On the way back, Sir Gawain happened to lodge at the castle in Astolat. The family received him eagerly and pressed him for news of the tournament. When Sir Gawain heard their story and discovered that the knight with the red sleeve had left his shield in the castle, he begged to see it. As soon as he saw the gold leopards on blue background, he cried out, "Sir Lancelot!" So the news was told, and Sir Bors, who had wounded him, was stricken to the heart, for he loved Sir Lancelot more than anyone in the world. Elaine, the Lily Maid, persuaded her father to let her ride out in search of the wounded knight and Sir Lavaine. By luck she came on her brother exercising his horse in a field. She told him of Sir Gawaine's coming and persuaded him to lead her to Sir Launcelot. From then on she never left the wounded man, but nursed him day and night. Days passed, and he lay desperately ill. Then came Sir Bors, who found him at last and stood beside his bed in such grief it made Sir Launcelot's eyes twinkle. And he said, "Cheer up, cousin. If I had not been so full of pride, I would have said who I was, and you would not have wounded me. Let us say no more about it." Gradually the battle for his life was won, and at last he was out of danger. Slowly he grew better, and was able to sit on his horse and do more each day. At last came the day that Elaine was dreading, and when they left the hermitage and went back to the castle in Astolat. Eventually he was well enough to leave Astolat and return to court. Elaine knew that she could not go back to her former life without him. She asked her fathers and 2 brothers to come with her and went to Sir Launcelot. "My lord Sir Launcelot," she said, "I see you are really going away. Fair knight, have mercy on me, and do not let me die for your love." Sir Launcelot had never run away from difficulties in his life. He did not now. "What do you want me to do?" he asked gravely. "Sir, marry me," she said. "My dear, thank you from my heart, but I am resolved never to be a married man." "Then I shall die of love for you." "You will not," answered Sir Launcelot. "I am twice your age, my dear, and you will grow to love me differently. You will not always feel like this. Some day you will meet a young man your own age, and all my life you may call on me to fight for you and be your knight." "Sir, of all this I will have nothing. If you do not marry me, I warn you, Sir Launcelot, my good days are done." But Sir Launcelot answered, "That I cannot do." Elaine gave a cry and fell unconscious on the ground. Her women carried her away to her room. There was silence. Sir Launcelot picked up his belt and gloves and was ready to go. Turning to young Lavaine, he asked him harshly if he was still willing to follow him. "Sir, I will always follow you unless you order me to leave you." So rode away Sir Launcelot and Lavaine. Elaine lay motionless on her bed. For 9 days and nights she lay without eating, drinking, or sleeping, uttering no sound but Sir Launcelot's name. Every day the people gathered at the castle gate and wept at the news that their lily maid was fading away. On the 10th day she roused herself. She spoke of her love, and she did no wrong because all kinds of love come from God. She asked her father to write a short history in a letter and put the letter in her hand as soon as she was dead, to dress her in the finest clothes and lay her in a barge draped all in black, to put their old servant in charge, and let the river carry her to London to the king's palace at Westminster. The court and Sir Launcelot would see her and read the letter and give her burial. King Arthur and Queen Guinevere were sitting, talking in a deep window seat overlooking the river. Into their view glided the black draped barge, and with one figure lying on it and one old man sitting at the oars. It came to the palace steps and there remained, rocking gently. The king and queen went hand in hand to look at the lily maid who lay there. Slowly the knights gathered around, and then came Sir Launcelot. The king took the letter from her hand and read it. Elaine's last message was, "My most noble knight, my Sir Launcelot, now death has separated us. I loved you, and I was called to the lily maid of Astolat. Unto all ladies I tell my sad story, but I ask you to pray for my soul and give me burial. This is my last request. Pray for my soul, Sir Launcelot." All eyes were on Sir Launcelot as the letter ended. He told the king that Elaine's death had not been his fault, and called Sir Lavaine, her brother, to prove it. "She was both fair and good, and I owed her much, but she loved me beyond measure." When the entire story was told, the lily maid was carried into the palace. The next day the court attended her burial, which was performed as magnificently as if for a queen. The servant rowed the barge home to the mourning castle of Astolat. That was a long one, right? Okay, so chapter 17 is The Queen and the Poisoned Apple. What does that sound like to you? After the quest for the Holy Grail ended and all those knights who survived had come back to court, there was a feeling of letdown. The Knights of the Round Table had waited 20 years for the coming of the knight who was to fill the Siege Perilous, and had worked hard fighting invaders and restoring safety and peace to Britain. Now Sir Galahad had brought an end to the adventures of the Holy Grail and had died, so all was over. A new generation of invaders was prowling the coast. Many of the knights were middle-aged, and the fighting all had to be done again. The knights were in low spirits, and idle quarrels became too important. Sir Lancelot took every opportunity to keep away from court and to go on patrols. Let me turn that just a little bit. There we go. One day when he was away, the Queen gave a dinner and invited 24 of the senior knights. Among them was Sir Gawain, who was known to have an appetite for fruit, especially apples and pears. Any host took special care over them when Sir Gawain was coming to dinner. The Queen also asked Gawain's brothers, Agravain, Gaheris, and Gareth, and his half-brother Mordred. Together they made up the Orkney clan, who had all conspired to murder Sir Lamorak years ago. Among the other guests was Sir Pinel, who was cousin to Sir Lamorak, but who never said anything about it and bided his time for revenge. With these came Sir Bors, Sir Kay, and Sir Palomides. These names are a killer. If Sir Lancelot had been there, nothing disgraceful would have happened, but Sir Pinel saw his chance. He poisoned some apples and arranged them in the dish nearest to Sir Gawain. Dinner went on, and there was music, and the Queen was merry. They talked of Sir Lancelot and wondered what great feat he would come back to tell about. The time came for dessert. Sir Pinel watched Sir Gawain between the candles. But poison was a clumsy choice of weapon. Sir Gawain was talking, and Sir Patrice next to him took an apple and ate it. Then he swelled up and fell down dead. Uproar broke out. Sir Pinel kept his head and said nothing. Everyone naturally suspected the Queen, who had arranged the dinner. Sir Gawain was convinced that the poison had been meant for him because an apple had been chosen. Sir Bors tried to make him be quiet, but Sir Gawain's wild nature could not be controlled, and he stood up hotly and accused the Queen. Guinevere stood like a statue, silent, seeing it was a plot, and thinking it was aimed at her because Sir Lancelot was not there to defend her. She did not answer, so no one spoke up for her defense. Sir Mador de la Porte, cousin to Sir Patrice, challenged the Queen and accused her of murder of his cousin. Here's Sir Mordor. After that, there could be no stepping back. The king was fetched, the charge repeated, and Sir Mordor demanded that the Queen be burnt to death. The method of trial was a battle between Sir Mordor and a champion for the Queen. The king was forbidden by his own laws from fighting, but felt sure that a champion would come forward, so he told Sir Mordor to ask for a day for trial. Sir Mordor then pointed out that none of the knights at the dinner would fight for the Queen, as they all believed her guilty. Sir Mordor saw the king's face change, and he immediately made the formal request for a day of the trial. The king chose the longest space of time that the law allowed, and fixed a day 15 days from then. Do you remember what 15 days is? A fortnight. Sir Mador was to appear armed in the meadow court outside Camelot. If a champion appeared for the Queen, God would reveal the right. If none appeared, then the Queen must be burned. She would be tied at the stake before the contest, ready for the judgment. I am answered, said Sir Mordor, and the king dismissed them. When the king and queen were alone, they had a desperate discussion about finding Sir Lancelot and what to do if he could not be found. What is the matter with you, said the king, that you cannot keep Sir Lancelot at your side? Then the king thought of Sir Lancelot's closest friend, Sir Bors. True, he had been at the dinner, but he might defend the Queen for Lancelot's sake. The Queen went that night to Sir Bors' apartments and made her request. He was most embarrassed by it. He had joined with the other knights in suspecting her, and they would think he was deliberately defending the guilty just because she was a queen. But when the king added his request to the queen's, then Sir Bors promised to fight as her champion unless a better knight than he should come forward. The queen wept with relief, and the king could say nothing, but took Sir Bors' hand and pressed it silently. The next day Sir Bors had news that Sir Launcelot was on his way back. He promptly left the court without taking his squire or telling anyone where he was going, and rode to meet him. He told him the entire story, and Sir Launcelot felt sure that it was a plot against the queen. He immediately laid his plans, and considered the weakness of Sir Mordor. Sir Launcelot, like all good generals, never underestimated his enemy, and tried to leave nothing by chance. "This has worked out just as I might have chosen," he said to Sir Bors. "Now you get ready for the fight right up to the last moment, and delay things as much as possible, because you know Sir Mordor gets much too excited when there is action, and the longer he is kept waiting, the wilder he will be when the battle begins." "Sir, let me handle him," said Sir Bors. So Sir Bors went back to court, and that evening announced he was going to fight for the queen. Many knights objected, as he had known they would. He answered them, "Lords, it seems to me she has always been the most generous lady with her gifts and her friendliness that I ever heard or saw. It would be a shame to all of us if we allowed her to be burned without striking a blow for her. So I tell you all that I will not allow it, for I do not think the queen guilty of Sir Patrice's death. She had no quarrel with him, nor any of us who were at dinner. I am sure that it will be proved later, whatever it looks like now, that there was no treason among us." Some of the knights came over to his side and agreed with him, and some did not. So the time went on, the 15th morning came, and everyone crowded to the jousting meadow. Opposite the royal stand, a huge pile stood ready to burn around an iron stake. There sat the queen. In the royal stand, King Arthur sat alone. Everywhere else, the ground was black with people. Never had such a crowd been seen before. Punctually on time, a herald blew, and Sir Mordor rode onto the ground, saluted the king, and in a voice echoing hollowly through his visor, made his accusation against the queen. The answering herald blew, and out rode Sir Bors. He saluted the king and declared the accusation false. Sir Mordor was very wrought up, demanded to join battle at once. Sir Bors delayed with some formal appeals and held matters up for some time. Finally they retired to their tents and took their arms and prepared. Out rode Sir Mordor, lance ready, his horse's neck lathered with excitement caught from its rider. He cantered around the field shouting his challenge, "Let your champion come forth if he dare." Hidden in the wood, Sir Launcelot watched him, noting every detail of his seat, his lance grip, the slant of his shield. He was circling a second time, the crowd was whispering, the king was glancing uneasily at Sir Bors' tent, when out from the woods there rode a strange knight bearing an unknown shield, riding a white horse at full gallop. Sir Bors rode out to meet him. There was a meeting. The stranger claimed the right to be the queen's champion. The new knight was big and grim and rode as well as Sir Launcelot. Challenges were exchanged, and the king agreed. Sir Bors withdrew, and Sir Mordor faced the strange knight down the length of the lists. And that's an arena for tournament and other contests. The first charge brought Sir Mordor down, and the queen's heart leapt, for in that riding and stroke she recognized Sir Launcelot. They fought on foot, and Sir Mordor struggled desperately against the grim figure that stalked after him, and beat blow upon blow. But at last Sir Launcelot struck him down and stood over him, unlacing his helmet to cut off his head. Sir Mordor begged for his life and acquitted the queen of his accusation. There we go. Launcelot, going to chop off your head, boy. I will only grant you your life on one condition, that you never raise this accusation again, and that no mention is made on Sir Patrice's tomb of the queen's name. Then Sir Mordor withdrew his supporters to his tent. The strange knight walked across the stairs of the royal stand. By that time the queen had been released and had joined the king. They both came down the stairs, greeted and thanked the knight, and took him back to the stand for a glass of wine. As he took off his helmet, there was a general shout of "Lancelot and Du Lac!" The king took both his hands, the queen burst into tears, and around them gathered Sir Lancelot, family and all of his friends, full of questions, exclamations, and joy. So it all ended happily, though at one time it had looked bad for the queen. The mystery of who poisoned the apple was not unraveled until an enchantress named Nume came to court. She declared the guilty knight was Sir Pinel, and he proved her right by fleeing from court and going into hiding in France. Okay, let's see. All right, I'm going to read chapter 17, which is oh my gosh, I can't say this name. Sir Meliagrance. Okay, this could be a little longer than a half an hour. But then the rest, I'll read the rest of the book tomorrow. Although Sir Lancelot rescued the queen in the affair of the poisoned apple, the attempt to dishonor her had been made, and it might be made again. The queen was beautiful, and there were plenty of bad or reckless knights who would not hesitate to take a chance to kidnap her if Sir Lancelot was elsewhere at the time. Sir Meliagrance, who was a coward, though he was in love with the queen for a long time. His love was of the kidnapping and not the knightly kind, and he waited for a chance when Sir Lancelot was away. It came on May Day. The court was in London. The queen arranged a party to ride out into the woods and fields around Westminster. Sir Lancelot was at council with the king and could not come, so the queen went out without him. She was accompanied by 10 knights and 10 ladies. Each knight had a squire and 2 servants. All were unarmed, wearing green silk for May Day and carrying only light court swords. May Day, by the way, is the first day of May. Sir Meliagrance lived in a castle 7 miles from Westminster, and there he had many men at arms and archers. When the queen was out with all her knights, out of the wood came Sir Meliagrance with 200 men, all prepared for fighting. He ordered the queen and her knights to halt. "Traitor knight," said the queen, "what are you thinking of? Will you bring shame on yourself? Remember, you are a knight of the Round Table. Think before you shame all knighthood and yourself and me." "This fine talk is all very well," replied Sir Meliagrance. "Madam, I have loved you many a year, and never until now could I get you at such a disadvantage. Therefore I will take you as I have found you." At this rude speech the queen's knights fell on Sir Meliagrance and his men, without armor and no hope of success. They fought with such skill that they killed 40 of the enemy before they themselves were all disabled. When the queen saw that they were wounded and surrounded, she cried to Sir Meliagrance that she would yield to him on condition that her knights were spared and were brought with her and lodged wherever she was lodged. Sir Meliagrance gave way, and though he had meant to kill them all and take only the queen, but time was passing, and he was afraid some hidden watcher in the wood might send a message to Sir Lancelot. He meant to be safe inside his castle wall before that happened. Meanwhile the queen outwitted him. While the wounded men were being helped onto horses, the queen had a word with a young page, a boy of 12, who rode a fast, fresh pony. "When you see a chance," she said, "slip away and take this ring to Sir Lancelot, and pray him, as he loves me, to rescue me, and don't spare your horse." The boy was on fire, and with pride and determination took the first chance that came, and when the big horses were crowding across a little stream, he had to wait until they were over. He turned his pony and spurred down a hedge path, and through some of Meliagrance's men chased him. He got away. Sir Meliagrance knew what that meant. Sir Lancelot would arrive. He hurried the queen and her knights into the castle, and sent 30 archers to ambush Sir Lancelot, telling them to shoot especially at his horse, for he had no faith that even 30 of them could overcome the great knight himself. The queen insisted on having the 10 wounded knights in her apartments, where she and her ladies would look after them. Shut out, Sir Meliagrance cursed and paced about the castle, preparing for the dreaded arrival of the queen's champion. The page made his way safely out of the woods and galloped his pony at full speed along the open road to Westminster. The Queen's ring won him an instant admission into the palace and Sir Launcelot's apartments. The great knight was just returning from the king's council. At the words, "a page with the Queen's ring," he halted and summoned the boy. He looked closely at the ring, and as he heard the story, his color changed and one of his rare angers came over him. There was no more talking then. His armor was brought, his horse prepared, and a message sent to Sir Lavaine to follow him. Within the hour he was going as hard as the heavy charger would carry him down the road to the wood. It had not occurred to him to take a troop of knights with him. He meant to settle this alone. Coming down to the river at Westminster, he met a group of pack horses and drivers taking all the road over the bridge, so he rode his horse straight down the bank into the river and swam across. From there he made straight for the place where he knew the Queen had gone. Trampled earth showed the battleground, and soon he was riding hard on the tracks of the company going back towards the castle. Suddenly the men in ambush sprang out on him and shot his horse down. Raging, Sir Launcelot came on them on foot with his huge sword. They all turned and ran. Sir Launcelot tramped on, over ditches, through wet fields in his heavy armor, getting more and more angry. He heard the welcome sound of a horse, and a woodman's cart came down the path with 2 carters in it. It was one of the rules of etiquette that no knight could ride in a cart. Sir Launcelot was too angry to care. He asked the carters if they would drive him to the castle 2 miles off. The driver refused. Sir Launcelot scrambled in the cart and gave the man such a blow with his mailed fist that he fell over backward dead. The other carter hastily said that he would drive the knight wherever he wanted, and Sir Launcelot came to the castle. The Queen and her ladies were sitting restless in a bay window, refusing all conversation with Sir Meliagrance and his men, watching and waiting for Launcelot. Up the winding approach from the wood to the castle gates came a horse and cart, and as they watched, the Queen gave a cry, for she saw standing up in the cart an armed knight. She sprang up, and her ladies pressed to the window. "How lucky I am that he is my friend," she cried. Sir Launcelot arrived alone at the castle gate. Lifting his visor, he roared in a voice that rang over the wall and in all the windows, "Where are you, false Meliagrance? Come out, you traitor, you and all your gang, for I am here, Sir Launcelot du Lac, to fight with you all." He seized the little gate and hurled it back on the porter who was hurrying down to lock it, and struck the man under the ear so that he broke his neck and killed him. He stepped into the archway and into the courtyard, and everyone hid from him and kept dead quiet. He held the entire castle at bay. Sir Meliagrance was terrified. He ran to the Queen while Sir Launcelot raged in the courtyard and begged her to save him from Launcelot. The Queen went swiftly down the winding stairs and out into the courtyard and took Sir Launcelot by both hands. He was still shouting for the traitor knight to come and face him. The Queen laughed gently at him, thanked him for coming, and said the knight is sorely regretting his entire misadventure that he has embarked upon. Sir Launcelot, still half angry about his dead horse, answered gruffly, "Madam, if I had known you had made up with him so easily, I wouldn't have made such haste to greet you." The Queen held his arm and smiled. "Why do you say that? Are you sorry you have done so well? You know I never made up with him because I liked him, but to stop a brawl and a scandal. Madam, no one except my Lord King Arthur and I could stop me from killing Sir Meliagrance before I go away." "I know that well," she answered gently. "You have everything arranged as you decide." Sir Launcelot's anger died, and he smiled back at her. "Madam, so long as you are pleased, it pleases me." And they went upstairs together to confront Sir Meliagrance. Trial by battle was arranged 8 days from then in the fields beside Westminster. Sir Meliagrance withdrew, heavy-hearted, bent on getting out of it by one means or another. Sir Launcelot went to talk to the 10 wounded knights, and after that everyone settled down to spend the day resting and looking after the sick men. The next day they would all return to Westminster. Purple tea, purple water bottle. What do you know? Sir Meliagrance invited Sir Launcelot to inspect the castle. He had made some arrangements beforehand, and on the tour Sir Launcelot stepped onto a trap door and fell into a deep cellar onto a pile of straw. Sir Meliagrance fastened the trap door and went back to his rooms. When inquiry was made, he professed to know nothing of the visitor's whereabouts, and everyone thought that Sir Launcelot had suddenly left the castle and gone back to Westminster. He often made these unexpected departures and arrivals, which were safeguard in times of danger. Meanwhile, Sir Lavaine had arrived, and the next morning escorted the Queen and her party back to court. When they arrived, the Queen was surprised not to find Sir Launcelot, but everyone assumed he was on some business of his own. But the next day Sir Meliagrance appeared, not looking at all like a man who was due to fight Sir Launcelot in a week. He was almost careless about his behavior to the Queen, and swaggered about in a way that amazed everyone. He kept this up day after day until the Queen became uneasy. She spoke to several knights, and everyone agreed that Sir Meliagrance's behavior, combined with Sir Launcelot's absence, looked as if some mischief had been worked. Sir Lavaine asked for the privilege of fighting instead of the champion, if any evil by chance it should be necessary. The king granted it, saying he was sure some treachery had been done. All this time Launcelot was shut up in the dark dungeon without sight of day. Food and drink were brought to him by the wife of one of the castle officers, who tried, like all women who come in contact with Sir Launcelot, to make him unfaithful to his vow to the Queen. She offered to set him free if he would become her knight. Politely but persistently, Sir Launcelot refused. He knew his vow represented the idea of honor and knighthood. If he would break his vow to the Queen in order to fight for her, his fighting for her would have no truth behind it. On the morning of the battle day, the lady's heart gave way. She knew that if she kept Sir Launcelot prisoner, he would hate her forever, and if she let him free in time, he would at least remember her with goodwill after that. So Sir Launcelot escaped in the nick of time. The heralds were sounding, and Sir Lavaine was ready at his end of the ground, when there was a commotion in the crowd, and the great horse and rider came thundering on the field. Roars went up as he was recognized. Saluting the king, he told everyone in a loud voice how Sir Meliagrance had trapped him. The cheering changed to howls and hisses, and the crowd prepared for another of Launcelot's victories. But Sir Meliagrance was a trickster to the last. The heralds blew, the knights withdrew to their ends of the lists, lances were poised, and the trumpets sounded, and as they charged, Sir Meliagrance slid off his horse, and Sir Launcelot dismounted and approached, sword in hand. But Sir Meliagrance refused to fight. He yielded himself in the most groveling language that chivalry allowed, and called on Sir Launcelot as a fellow knight of the Round Table not to kill him. He had lost all the privileges of knighthood by kidnapping the Queen and trapping Sir Launcelot, and yet he claimed them now to save himself. Sir Launcelot hesitated. He could not bring himself to kill a man who crawled on the ground and would not get up and fight, but if he let him go, he knew that he would be treacherous once again. "Get up," he exclaimed, "and fight." "Not I," replied Sir Meliagrance, who was trading on Sir Launcelot's chivalry and knew that he was safe while he refused to fight. "I will never get up until you agree that I have surrendered." "Well, I will make you an offer," said Sir Launcelot. "I will take my helmet off and all the armor down my left side, and I will have my left arm tied behind me, and I will fight you like that." Sir Meliagrance stood up. Such a handicap had never been heard of. Doesn't it make you think? This is where that phrase came from. I could fight you with one hand tied behind my back. "My lord King Arthur," he shouted, "you heard this offer. Remember it, because I am going to accept it. Have him disarmed and bound according to his own offer." The king spoke uneasily to his friend. "You cannot mean that, Sir Launcelot. You spoke in heat. You cannot keep up such terms." "I will, my lord, for I never go back on my word." Everyone's heart sank as the disarming began. Protests rose all around the field, and the king and queen fell silent. Only the enemies of the king, Sir Mordred and Sir Agravain, and the evil men who plotted with them leaned forward and suddenly drew a breath. If Lancelot was killed, who knew what chance for evil might open up in the kingdom? Sir Lancelot was ready. His head, neck, half his body, and his left leg were bare, and his arm was tied behind him. Most men could not even lift their swords with one hand, still less use them. Sir Lancelot knew the odds against him were so heavy that the first encounter could settle it. He was not afraid. Sir Meliagrance rushed in. Sir Lancelot sprang aside, swinging as he leapt, and there was a crash. Sir Lancelot stood waiting to be unbound, and men dragged Sir Meliagrance off the field. His head and helmet were split in two. Roar upon roar went up from the crowd. Sir Mordred and Sir Agravain sat back and waited for another day. There you have it. Thanks for listening, and tomorrow I will finish King Arthur. Bye, 4th grade.